Hi guys, it's Friday morning. Normally this time of day I'd be at my day job, but today is a holiday here in Denmark, so I figured you could deserve an extra long walk this morning. I've got a 3-day weekend aboard Athena to look forward to, with plenty of DIY fun, but I'm gonna spend the next couple of hours walking this little guy, so I'll see you guys a little later today aboard Athena. Now that Jökull, or Mr. Snuggles, which is his latest nickname, is busy taking one of his all-day naps, I can head up and get busy. It is pretty windy here in the yard today, and I don't know how much of that wind noise my mic is gonna pick up. So why don't we head down below before I fill you in on what I've got in store for this weekend. If you guys follow me over into the galley, you'll be able to see the first item on my to-do list for today. It's nothing too exciting, sadly. It's just a matter of tidying up a bit. I mean, geez, look at this place. All kinds of tools, sandpaper with weird writing on it, gift wrapping twine. I don't know what I was doing here, but I'll just tidy this up and I'll be right back. That is so much better. I do find it a little bit more difficult to focus and actually getting things done when the boat is a huge mess, so I think this was a good first step for today. In case you're curious about the scroll saw here, it's here because I'd like to repurpose the teak deck when I remove it, and I'm playing around with a few ideas. I picked up this scroll saw yesterday, and it's the first scroll saw I've ever owned, and I think it's also the first scroll saw I've ever really used. But my plan is to use this scroll saw to turn the old teak deck, which looks like this, into something that looks a little something like this. Now this is just a quick prototype, so don't judge me on the appearance of this. The first thing I did after having torn this out of its packaging was to make these 3 prototypes. So this is the first one, and just like the second one, this one actually broke down here, but I glued that one together again. So I tried this one, which broke, but then I just decided to go for a bit of thicker wood, but of course this is not the teak deck, which was kind of the whole point. So maybe I'll have to go with a little bit thicker anchor, or maybe reinforce the back of this with some carbon fiber or something like that. But yeah, what do you guys think of this idea? Is it kind of cool, or is it just silly? I don't want to make just small wooden anchors. Those are just prototypes, although I think they are pretty cool. I could make anything, like buttons, jewelry, doohickeys, you name it. Now, the teak deck is in pretty bad shape, so I don't think I should count on salvaging pieces that are much bigger than this one, but yeah, there are plenty of possibilities in this old piece of teak. The scroll saw is not on the to-do list for today. I just thought I'd mention it, so let's jump back into the to-do list. At the very top of my to-do list is hooking up the AC source select panel. It's basically the last bit of the AC installation I need to take care of before my friendly neighborhood electrician can swing by, check everything out, and do the final hookup. So I'm very much looking forward to getting this installed. After I'm done hooking up that panel, the next thing on my to-do list are the wooden stringers I'm going to attach to the hull in here. Those stringers are going to be used for securing the wooden slats that are going to cover up the insulation on the side of the hull. I'm going to do that basically the same way I did aboard Obelix. Insulation, 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 insulation. You know what? The stuff that keeps you frickin' warm. I might take care of the inside of this locker here before I get started on the stringers, but that depends on whether or not I've got the glue I need, so we'll see. Let's get back to the AC source select panel. The box this came in also included a basic wiring diagram and some stickers. I've already applied the first sticker down here, that's the one that says shore. I still need to put these 2 on there, so let's do that. These small labels here are recessed into the panel. Bluesea mentions in their marketing wank that that's so that the labels all are lined up correctly. That's very thoughtful. And sure, I don't have a generator yet, but they didn't include any blank labels, so I'll just put the generator up here. If you don't think this looks just a tiny bit snazzy, there's a good chance you're blind, but let's go ahead and take a look at the wiring diagram. This is pretty straightforward. There are 3 sources here in the diagram. I've only got the 2 of them aboard the boat right now, so those are the only 2 I need to concern myself with. From source number 1, which is going to be shore power, the hut is connected to position number 1, and the neutral is connected to position number 9. And on the back of this, the positions are actually numbered, so this shouldn't be too difficult. So in the case of my shore power connection, I will need to find position number 1, which is right there. And then also position number 9, which is right there. There's something a little bit odd here. Now, if I loosen this screw, now I am no great expert in ABYC standards. I'll say that up front. We don't have them over here, so of course I'm not an expert. But yeah, I thought the ABCY recommended either ring terminals or flanged spade terminals. This is neither. Blue Sea is a very reputable supplier of stuff for handling angry pixies, so I'm sure they're in compliance with ABYC standards. And perhaps one of you guys could tell me what this type of terminal is called and in what cases it's okay to use this. If you know, please go ahead and leave a comment down below. God dang fiddlesticks! I was absolutely sure I had picked up some flanged spade connectors while I was in the US for that panel, but they're nowhere to be found. I've just torn through everything in the forward cabin, but that's actually okay because I don't technically need them. I just wanted them to make the panels look alike, but let's go take a look. As you can see, I've put ring terminals on the safety connectors here, and that's because these are secured to the little stud that's here. But the screws in here, you can't actually remove them, so you can't use a ring terminal. The only option is a flanged spade terminal, or simply just no terminal at all. This was pretty fiddly, but it's okay. I'm going to redo the wiring once I've gotten my hands on some flanged spade connectors. But this is the last screw. That looks pretty good, right? If we take a look inside the locker, it looks good. It looks good reasonably. That's great. And then we've got a genuine meat hook abortion. I've purposely left the wiring like that because as soon as I get my hands on some flanged spade terminals, I'm gonna redo the wiring. So for now, I've left it long and unmanaged, but yeah, that's okay. In a couple of weeks, I'll be able to correct that. Well, turns out there is actually one teeny tiny thing more I need to do before I'm ready for the friendly neighborhood electrician to swing by. And that is to mount this box here close to the shore power inlet. This box is going to house this little meter I showed you in one of the previous videos. Somewhere around here. Looks good to me. Okay, so now we just need to add some cable clamps. And that is about the last of it. All I need to do now is just to go outside and connect up the shore power inlet. Hopefully that is the last bit of AC stuff I'll do for a really long time. If I don't count the little bit of cleanup I need to do around the AC source select panel, I'm now done with the AC, at least until I start fixing up the forward cabin. I'll need to add a few outlets in there too, but for now I am done, and that feels pretty dang good. I've only really planned for one outlet in the forward cabin, and that's this one right here for the washer. But in case I want to add a separate outlet in there for some reason, I've still got this empty slot right here. I'll have the electrician hook up the RCD and the MCB, and after that's done, I should have shore power aboard Athena. I'm very satisfied with the progress I've made today, especially considering I got a really late start. Tomorrow I'm gonna start playing with some plywood and some epoxy, and that's gonna be a lot of fun. But for now, I'm gonna head back to Obelix and take Jökull for his evening walk. Good morning, guys. Or, well, I say good morning, but in reality it's a lot closer to noon than morning. I had a lot of stuff to take care of this morning. For one, it's Jökull's birthday today. He's turning 6. So I spent the morning taking him for an extra long walk, and I've also been up trying to get some quotes on the mahogany slats I'll use to cover the hull in the port aft cabin. I would like to stress that this project, and by this project I mean putting up insulation wooden slats in the aft cabin, is basically just me killing time until I can move Athena into the shed I mentioned in my last video. I think that'll happen in a couple of weeks, so I don't want to get started on rewiring the DC because I'd have to stop sort of halfway through before being able to finish it, and that would be really annoying. So it's much better to spend the time on something like this that I can just leave, focus on the deck and the hull, and then come back to this project sometime in the fall. This is a quick drawing of the area of the hull I'll need to cover with the wooden slat, which is basically the entire hull in the aft cabin. I then used the drawing to figure out how much wood I need, and I need 67 pieces of at least 2 meters and 4 or 5 pieces of at least 2.7 meters, and that comes out to a total of 148 meters. For my American friends, that comes out to 485 feet. Thank you very much, Google. Sure, it would be a lot cheaper to go with something like vinyl, but then on the other hand, the wooden slats are gonna last a lot longer. I'm expecting a price tag for that mahogany just north of $500, but we'll see. Fair warning, I'm doing this handheld, so there might be a little bit of camera shake. But with that amount of wood, I should be able to cover the entirety of the hull in here, going all the way from the back of the bunk there, along the side of the hull here, and then all the way to the forward bulkhead there, right underneath the locker. So the entirety of the hull here is going to get covered by those wooden slats. I think that's going to look pretty dang spiffy. My primary concern is that having all of that mahogany in that tiny aft cabin is going to make it a little bit dark in there for my liking, but if that turns out to be the case, I could always just paint some of the mahogany white. I know, painting mahogany, deadly sin, yada yada yada, but I don't want to have it too dark in there, but we'll see what happens. I'm also going to be insulating the inside of this tiny locker here, but I'm not going to be putting up wooden slats in there. Instead, I'm going to put up a piece of plywood, and I've made a template here. So if you notice here, there's about a 2 centimeter air gap all the way around the template, and that's to make sure any kind of flexing in the hull doesn't cause any issues. The main purpose of this piece of plywood is to give me somewhere to mount a bunch of terminal bars. Aha! And that is why you save scrap pieces of plywood. Yep, that looks like a good fit to me. Of course, I can't just screw this piece of plywood directly onto the hull. For one, it's just a single layer of fiberglass, there's no coring in there, and also I need to leave room for the insulation. And this should be that.
Insulation. Insulation. Insulation.
Insulation.
Insulation.
Insulation. God dang it. Ta-da! Camping mats. To be more exact, 8mm closed cell foam camping mats, and it's very important that it's closed cell foam. This is the cheapest way I've found to be able to buy closed cell foam. 8mm is not a lot, but that is all I plan on adding on the inside of the lockers, because this is basically just to deal with condensation. On the side of the hull, I'm gonna add a little bit more. When I made the 9-part series about putting up wooden slats aboard obelisks in the V-berth, I got a lot of flack for my pronunciation of that word. So yeah, but let's just forge ahead. The mat is 8 millimeters thick and the plywood I've got here is 12 millimeters. So that leaves a gap of about 4 millimeters between the two, making this perfect to use as a spacer for that panel that goes inside the locker. And this was even a scrap piece from when I cut that, so it's perfect. For spacers. In case you're wondering why I've rounded over the edges here, that's because I'm going to be laying up fiberglass on top of these, and that makes life a lot easier. Then if you're wondering why I haven't rounded over all of the edges, well, I tried, but apparently this is a pretty sucky piece of that plywood and I got a ton of tear out. So this will have to do. I've gone ahead and beautified the panel a bit, cut some angles here, rounded over the corners. So this is ready to get mounted. And I've already got the spacers, so the next thing I need to do is just a bit of sanding on the hull, and then I can epoxy these in place. This will be lovely. It's been far too long since I've had the pleasure of feeling the fiberglass itch. Sadly, the area I need to sand is tiny, so this will be over far too quickly. And I'm done sanding, so the surface is now keyed. I've also wiped down the surface to get rid of any grease. I've marked the position of the spacers and put out some masking tape to hold the spacers in place while the adhesive cures. You guys have seen me use this stuff a bazillion times when adhering wood to fiberglass. This is West Systems 105 and 106. Unfortunately, I've only got their 205, that's the fast hardener, and it is a tad warm today, so I don't have a ton of working time, but let's give it a go. While I get the camera set up, I've smeared the thickened epoxy onto the sides of the mixing cup in a thin as layer as possible, just to give myself a little bit more working time. And there we go. Now I just need to wait for the thickened epoxy to cure. I know this is gonna sound potentially a little bit lame, but I'm gonna go celebrate my dog's birthday. Before I go, I've got time to do one last little thing. I would like to be able to proudly display my DC wiring, and seeing as I am most likely gonna mount some terminal blocks on this panel here, this needs a bit of paint. And by a bit, I mean 5 coats. And that is the first coat applied. Only 4 more to go, so I should easily have this finished by next weekend. Now I'm gonna go hang out with Mr. Snuggles, but I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Good morning, guys. It is a beautiful Sunday morning. Because this is a 3-day weekend, I'm in a bit of a precarious situation. I've already got a ton of footage for this video, which is nice because it kind of takes the pressure off. But then again, I don't want to go too far above the 20-minute mark. That seems to be a sweet spot for my channel. The average view duration is around 17 minutes. On the other hand, I've also got some stuff I'm going to be doing today that I want to show you. So I'll try and keep that as brief as I possibly can. I've left the thickened epoxy underneath the spacers here to cure overnight, so they should be well adhered to the hull by now. Yeah, they seem to be on there pretty dang good. I'm going to hold off on applying fiberglass on top of those spacers in the locker until I'm ready to do the same with the stringers here in the hull for the wooden slats. So the next thing I need to do is to figure out the placement of those stringers. And to do that, the placement of this port light becomes very important. or well, actually not this port light, but the new port light that will replace it. I'll be replacing the 6 old leaky hazed over port lights in the side of the hull with 6 newer, slightly bigger CE approved port lights. And of course I want to see if I can space out the stringers evenly throughout this section of the hull. This template is the entire new port light, so that means including frame. It's not just the window portion, so they're not that much bigger, but just big enough that I don't have to start rebuilding the hull in order to be able to fit them. The stringers are going to be made out of 5 centimeter wide strips of plywood like the one I've got here. And to help me line them up, I've made some, yes, you guessed it, templates. I've got the first 3 templates adhered to the hull now, just using some masking tape. You might be able to see one behind me there and the other 2 right here. But I think this whole situation is going to require a little bit more mulling over than I had initially thought, because I don't want to add too many stringers. The reason being that wood, which I'll use for the stringers, has a lot lower R value than the foam I'll use, meaning it's not as good of an insulator. So naturally, I don't want to add too many of these. I'd hoped I'd be able to space these stringers out with about 50 centimeters between each of them. That worked out really well aboard Obelix. But this one, I can't move that one because that's there because of the locker. So that would put this one right about there in the middle of the port light. And I want to have the screws be visible. I don't want to have to mess around with pulling out bungs in case I ever need to remove the wooden slats. So having a line of screws right there and then another line over here is gonna look not that great. I guess I could put one here, and then go back to 50 centimeters between there. But yeah, like I said, this is gonna require a little bit further mulling over. God dang nabbit, I was absolutely sure I checked this last summer when I first started looking at port lights. But if I'm reading the specifications provided by the manufacturer of the port lights correctly, the curvature of my hull is a lot greater than what they're recommending you use their port lights for. Well, I need to figure out what port lights to use before I can place the stringers. It's a really good thing I've already got this video in the bag, otherwise this would really suck, because I was planning on sanding the hull today and getting the stringers adhered on there with thickened epoxy, but I'm sorry about the somewhat odd ending to this video. You guys should just consider the last bit of the video here as a small teaser for what I'll hopefully be working on next weekend. The joys of DIY boat stuff, right? Well, that is going to be the end of this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and if you've enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like. See you!